welcome back to Chase's Everything Shooting. Today's episode is the age-old question: is reloading 9mm worth it? You know, a lot of people, there's a lot of opinions out there, but I did some research and hit some data points, and hopefully today we'll be able to talk about, is it really worth it? Well, yeah, for sure it is. Yeah, I'm not so sure. So let's get to it. There's a lot that goes into reloading. And there are some items that I did not put in my calculations. So I want to kind of go over those data points so you know how I came up with the information and the data, and it'll help you decide if it's really worth it or not. Well, let's talk about the presses. There's a lot of different companies out there making presses. Dillon and Hornaday and RCBS and Lee, and there's a number of them out there. And I kind of looked at adding those in and trying to figure out the costs. And it's really, really hard because by the time you figure out how many loads that you can run through and what's happening with it, how do you depreciate it out? So I didn't. So let's just talk about real quick about the different reloading presses, and then we'll move on. We have the progressive presses, and those are the ones where the case drops down, you pull the handle, it drops the powder, it puts the primer in, it goes to all these different stations, and then it eventually kicks one out. And I have a progressive press. I have a Dillon 650. And I just think it's a phenomenal press. I've tried other ones, but I really like that one for some reason. It just kind of works the way I do. And then you have the manual press. And that's where you put your cases all in a little holder, and then you take one out and you deprime, one that you prime. Then you do your powder all individually. And then you put your bullet on, then you press it. It just takes a little bit longer. I shouldn't say a little bit longer, a lot longer, but it can be sometimes much more precise if you're shooting, let's say, long range practice or competitions where you really need to get it exactly perfect the way you want it every time. I'd say probably the manual press is the best way to go. All right, let's talk about how I figured out what products I was going to use and how those calculations worked. So in my reloading, we know that we didn't have a reloader cost involved in a press and all the other little items that we need to be able to reload. So it all boiled down to what gunpowder, what primer, what case, and then what bullet. So let's get to it. Let's talk about the powder. Well, I chose Tight Group because I shouldn't say I thought, that Tight Group is probably one of the better powders out there for 9mm. It's a very even burning powder, and it's a very good powder. So I found somewhere online that had Tight Group in inventory in 1-pound containers. And so I used that company to get their numbers from. Now, I have to tell you, I did not put a hazmat fee in there, okay? I got to just say, I did not put a hazmat fee in there because depending on how you buy, if you buy together, all that kind of stuff, that kind of taints the number. So let's get to the next product. The next is CCI primers. And I use the 500 because I've used the 500 primer before. It's a phenomenal primer. Can you get other primers cheaper? Yeah, probably. But that's a very, very good base primer for what we're building. Again, I did not put a hazmat fee in there. So you have to know that if you are going out to buy those, there could be a hazmat fee. Then I used Extreme bullets. You can use Berries, Extreme. There's a lot of different brands of that, and I've used a lot of different ones. I used Extreme because Extreme has been very, very good for me. It's very, very accurate. very easy to load with, and likewise with Berries. Some of the other brands, yeah, if you get into Hornaday, they're phenomenal, but they're so expensive. I didn't want to use those, so I used the Extreme Bullet for the 9 millimeter. Then on cases, I did it a bunch of different ways. And I did it as if you were buying brand new cases, and those cases are unprimed. So those were, I believe, Champion. And then I did one where if you were using reclaimed, um, refurbished, all the companies use all these different things to say, hey, it's been once fired and we've cleaned it up and selling it. So some of them call it range brass, but anyway, so you know where we were going on this. Also, I did a calculation on if you had your own brass. Now, for me, I have my own brass. And I save it when I go to the range. I pick it up. I don't shoot 9 millimeter that often. My wife goes through a boatload of it, and my son goes through a whole lot of it. So we try to keep all of our brass, and I do all the things that we have to do to keep it nice and package it and all that stuff for when I want to reload it. So there's a lot into reloading, but the one I did was, hey, you got your own brass. Okay, so let's talk the numbers. Okay, and so here we go on pricing. So with new brass, and you'll notice on this chart, I've got new brass with Hornaday and regular new brass. And I did that because some people may be loading competition wise, so I wanted to give you an idea. But for new brass, per 1,000 rounds is $326.67. Per box of 50 is $16.33. Per box of 20 is $6.53 with a cost of 33 cents a round. Now the Hornaday, phenomenal brass, and I didn't really use a lot of that in here, but I wanted to toss it in for you guys that are competition guys. So per thousand would be $447.22. Per box of 50 would be $23.71. For a box of 20 would be $9.48 with a cost per round of 47 cents a piece. Okay, so let's get to the used brass, reclaimed, range brass, whatever you want to call it. Let's get to that and let's see where the numbers are. If you used the reclaimed brass, per thousand would be $256.67. Box of 50 would be $12.83. A box of 20 would be $6.13. Per round would be 26 cents a round. Now remember, I rounded all these up. Now, if you had your own personal brass, and that's a good one to have, and if you're going to plan to reload, start saving your brass now. So on my personal brass, the cost per thousand is $216.67. The cost for 50 is $10.83. The cost of a box of 20 is $4.33. The cost per round is 22 cents a piece. So now you're going, okay, so we figured out what all the costs are and how that works. What numbers did you use to go against? Well, what I did is I went to my local retail gun store. Okay. Now, I'm not saying they're a true gun store. It's Academy Sporting Goods. We only have one big one in town. And they're probably, no, I shouldn't say probably, they're usually the cheapest. There's an Academy Sporting Goods, and they're the big boys. We've got a bunch of different little gun shops and stuff, but they're the big boys. So I went to Academy and I went through different cases, different brands, all these different things, and I came up with a good list and a good cost, really to see if this is worth it. So let's talk about the different brands that I used in the comparison and how they worked. So I used the Browning, and the Browning would be $360 per thousand. Per box of 50 was $18. Per box of 20 is $7.20. Pardon me. And the cost per round is 36 cents per round. Then I used the Federal Range, and it had the exact same number as the Browning. Probably Federal's making it for Browning, so who knows about that? But the exact same numbers. Then I came down to the Remington UMC, and the Remington UMC was $500 per thousand, $25 for a box of 50, $10 for a box of 20, and the costs were 50 cents a piece. Then I used the CCI Blazer, and that's a pretty popular brand from what I understand at the store, so that really is a good number. The CCI Blazer is $400 per thousand, $20 for a box of 50, $8 for a box of 20, and 40 cents a round cost. So then I went down in Winchester and I used the Winchester NATO. And that's supposed to be their kind of low end kind of a bullet. So for 1,000 is $387, 1935 for 50, 774 for 20, and 39 cents a round. So, again, we're kind of compiling all these numbers and looking at them. Is it really worth it? So let's get down to the Norma. And the Norma was I've never seen them. Okay, they're new to our store here, and I haven't seen it in any other of the gun stores here and other gun stores I've been around. But the Norma range, it was $340 for 1,000, $17 for 50, $680 for a box of 20, and 34 cents a round for the normal box or for the normal round. I'm sorry. So is it worth reloading? Well, I could have gone online and probably found cheaper ammunition prices, meaning bullets, pre-manufactured bullets. But I didn't want to do that because then we would have to throw freight in it, and we would have hazmat. We'd have a lot of other things. I'm trying to keep the numbers very, very uniform. So let's really talk about, is it worth it? Well, let's really look at it. The cheapest per round was the Norma range at 34 cents a round. Up in our calculations with new brass was 33 cents a round. And if you had your own brass, it was 22 cents a round. Man, I got to say, yeah, if you don't have hazmat fees, you don't have freight, you don't have all that into it, is it cheaper to reload than buy new? It is. Now, the big factor I didn't calculate in is my time. What is your time worth? That's what you have to really look at. What's your time worth? Is it worth $20 an hour, $12 an hour, $5 an hour, zero? I'm going to say I don't calculate my time. I reload for the enjoyment of that and to have a way to always have 9 millimeters or 45 or whatever I reload. So for me, I think it's very, very well worth it. I've invested in the reloaders. I'm going to be using them for years. And so I think it's well worth it. But is it really worth it to you? Hey, I hope this has helped. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave me a question down in the box below. And please don't forget to like and subscribe because, yeah, YouTube's playing some games with our algorithm. So please like and subscribe. Thanks.